The day everything shifted for me began the same way most Saturdays did. Quiet, slow, and soaked in the kind of loneliness that settles into the corners of a house when the years start to stretch behind you. My name is Larissa. I'm 74, and for the longest time I believed I understood what my life had become: predictable, steady, small. But that afternoon in the garage, it showed me something I hadn't expected to feel again. It's strange how dust in sunlight can make a place look almost magical. Thin beams pushed through the slats of the garage window, turning the air into a golden haze. Old tools, faded boxes, forgotten decorations. Everything around me looked exactly the same, and yet I felt unusually aware of myself in it. Maybe it was the silence, maybe it was the ache of time, or maybe it was because I'd been alone for too long. My daughter Alara had left early for work, rushing out with her usual chaos. Hair unbrushed, bag slipping off her shoulder, coffee barely balanced in her hand. "Mom, I have my keys," she'd snapped when I called out. "I'm just late." Then she blew me a quick kiss, the kind you throw when you love someone but can't stop to show it. And then she was gone, leaving the house colder than before. I washed the single cup I'd used for breakfast. 1 cup, 1 life. There was a time when 6 cups crowded the counter after warm, noisy mornings. But that morning it was just mine and the shadows of everything that used to be. I don't know what made me decide to clean the garage. Maybe boredom. Maybe the ache of missing my husband, gone 8 years now. Grief ages strangely. Some days it's sharp. Other days it's distant, like a dream someone else had. I opened the garage door, took in the familiar scent of oil, dust, and cardboard, and muttered to myself, "Well, Larissa, if you fall out here, it'll take a while before anyone finds you." I laughed, shook my head, and started moving boxes. Time slipped away until a sharp pull in my lower back stopped me cold. I gasped, leaned against the workbench, and breathed through the pain. The world outside carried on. A dog barking, a car rolling by, sunlight warming the pavement. Just another ordinary afternoon, until I heard the sound of a car door closing. I peeked through the dusty window. I recognized the car immediately. Gabrielle's, my daughter's boyfriend. Mid-40s, calm eyes, soft voice, a man who always noticed more than he said. He had become a quiet presence in our lives, helpful, gentle, thoughtful. And today, he was walking straight toward the garage. The side door creaked open, letting in a slice of warm light before closing again behind him. "Larissa?" he called, his voice warm, familiar. "You in here?" "Yes, come in," I answered quickly, wiping my hands on my old sweater, suddenly aware of the oil smudges on my sleeves and my hair pinned back with a cheap plastic clip. He stepped inside, framed for a moment in that soft line of sunlight. It's silly to say it felt cinematic, like he was stepping between 2 worlds, but that's how it imprinted itself in my mind. "There you are," he said with a smile. "Alara told me you were trying to move boxes again." "She told you that?" I frowned. "She was worried, asked me to stop by between clients." "She worries too much," I muttered. Gabrielle didn't argue. Instead, he walked closer, his eyes tracing the clutter in a slow, thoughtful way. He always looked at things like he could read stories inside them. Boxes weren't just boxes to him. They were history. "You're holding yourself stiff," he said softly. "How's your back?" I blinked. I hadn't realized he could see that. "It's fine," I lied. "Just old bones complaining." Without asking again, He placed a warm, steady hand on my elbow and guided me to the wooden stool. There was nothing inappropriate in the gesture, nothing anyone could accuse, but my heart reacted like it hadn't in years. It skipped, it trembled, it remembered. "You should have called me," he said, crouching to meet my eyes. "I could have helped." "I don't want to bother you," I whispered. "You have enough going on. Work, Alara, your own life." "You're never a bother," he said quietly. Silence fell, but it wasn't empty. We listened to the low hum of the old light overhead, the creak of wood, the distant rustle of leaves outside. And then he moved closer and brushed a faint streak of dust from my cheek. "You're sweating," he murmured. I snorted. That's what happens when you're wrestling with 40 years of clutter and regrets. He laughed, really laughed, and the warmth of it filled the garage like sunlight I didn't know I'd been missing. He started lifting boxes easily, his muscles working under the fabric of his shirt. I watched quietly, feeling that strange mix of gratitude and something else, something dangerous, not for what he was doing, but for how he looked at me, like I wasn't invisible. When he paused to set down a box of old photo albums, he said softly, "I'd like to see these someday." "Just old pictures," I muttered. Sometimes old pictures explain more than we expect. The way he said it made something tighten inside me. And then, as he leaned against the workbench beside me, close enough that I could catch the faint, clean scent of his cologne, he asked a question that landed too deep. "Larissa, who reaches you now?" Before I could answer, footsteps crunched outside, a distant car door closing, pulling the moment back into reality. The question hung between us like a fragile thread, and that was the first moment I knew something inside me was shifting, something I wasn't prepared to face. If someone had walked into the garage at that exact moment, they would have seen nothing unusual, just a younger man helping an older woman move boxes. But inside me, something subtle had shifted, like a door creaking open in a room I'd kept closed for far too long. Gabriel didn't ask about the moment again. Instead, he continued lifting boxes, more purposeful now, almost too focused, as if the physical labor could silence the question he had accidentally released into the air. I watched him with the uneasy awareness of a woman remembering what it felt like to be seen. Truly seen. "Put that one near the shelf," I said quietly. He nodded, lifting it with ease. "This one's heavy. What do you keep in here?" "Memories that should have been sorted 20 years ago," I murmured. He gave a soft smile, gentle, curious, then brushed a little dust off his hands. When he looked at me again, his voice had changed, softer. "Larissa, you don't have to carry everything alone." "Old habits," I whispered. "They cling to you." "And loneliness?" he asked. "Does that cling too?" The question struck deeper than I wanted to admit. I turned away, pretending to look at a stack of paint cans. "Loneliness doesn't cling," I said softly. "It settles." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Dust floated lazily in a beam of sunlight. Something metallic clicked in the quiet. The world outside went on, normal, ordinary, while inside that garage, time felt like it was slowing down around us. Then, without warning, memories hit me like a sudden warmth. The quiet mornings with my husband, the laughter, the arguments, the days when I used to feel beautiful without trying. 8 years should have been enough to soften grief, but losing someone leaves a shadow you learn to walk around. "Larissa," Gabrielle's voice pulled me back. I blinked, Sorry, I wandered. I get it, he said. We all wander when we're hurting. His eyes met mine, steady and sincere. It had been years, since a man looked at me without pity, without politeness, without talking over me or past me. Gavin wasn't flirting. He wasn't crossing a line. He was simply present in a way that felt dangerous. I should check on that box against the wall, I muttered, needing air. Before I could stand, a warm palm pressed lightly against my arm. Larissa, he said softly, you're trembling. My breath caught. It's nothing, I whispered. Just age catching up. It's not age, he said gently. His hand didn't move. He wasn't gripping me. He wasn't pulling me close. He was simply touching me. A human gesture, a comforting one. But for me, it felt like electricity, like someone had reached into the quietest part of my chest and stirred something awake. I see you, he murmured. Even when you think you've faded into the house, into the routines, I see you. Oh, how dangerous a simple sentence can be when spoken softly. I'm not used to being noticed, I said, my voice breaking. You deserve to be, he replied. The words cracked something open inside me. A hollow ache rose to the surface, not for romance, not for desire, but for companionship, for the small, subtle tenderness I had forgotten could exist at my age. My eyes burned. I blinked rapidly, trying to hide the tears. He noticed anyway. Larissa, are you crying? No, I lied, wiping quickly. Just dust. He didn't push. Instead, he took one slow step closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth, but not close enough to break the line of respect he was fighting to hold. You don't have to be strong right now, he whispered, but I shook my head. If I let myself unravel, I don't know who I'll be afterward. He sighed, a sound filled with empathy rather than frustration, and then something unexpected happened. Something small, simple, yet disarming. He crouched slightly, so he was eye level with me again. You're allowed to need things, Larissa. Need. Such a fragile, terrifying word. I swallowed hard. I don't want to ruin anything, I said. Not for you, not for Alara, not for me. You won't, he whispered, as long as we don't lie to ourselves about what we're feeling. Feeling, another dangerous word. A sudden noise from outside, a car door slamming somewhere down the street, made us both flinch, like two people caught in a moment they hadn't meant to enter. Gabrielle stood quickly and stepped back, putting space between us again. You should rest, he said quietly. And you should get back to your day, I replied. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me in a way that made my heart ache. He wiped his palms on his jeans, hesitated, and then, very softly, placed his hand on my shoulder. Not caressing, not suggestive, just present. If you ever need to talk, he said, about anything, I'm here. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He gave a faint, conflicted smile and left the garage, closing the door gently behind him. As the echo faded, the quiet rushed back in. But it wasn't the same quiet I knew before. Something warm, fragile, and frightening lingered in the air, like the first breeze before a coming storm. I sat there for a long time, listening to the fading sound of his car. My hand still remembered the warmth of his touch. My heart remembered the tremble in his voice. And somewhere deep inside me, a truth I had been avoiding whispered loud and clear. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. For 2 days after that moment in the garage, the house settled back into its usual routine, or at least it tried to. The sunlight still moved across the walls at the same pace. The kettle still whistled too loudly in the mornings. Alara still rushed in and out of the house, like a woman constantly chasing time. Yet nothing felt the same. I kept replaying the garage scene in my mind, not the hand-holding or the brush of warmth, but the way Gabriel looked at me, like I wasn't invisible, like he had peeled away years of silence and found something still alive underneath. It wasn't romance, it wasn't longing, it was awakening, and awakening is its own kind of danger. On the third day, the sky was a soft blue haze when I decided to tend to the garden. My roses needed trimming, and I needed distraction. The thorny bushes steadied me, grounding me in something familiar. I was kneeling in the dirt when I heard a set of footsteps behind me, quiet, almost hesitant. That alone told me it wasn't Alara. She moved like a storm. When I turned, Gabriel stood there with his hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched as if bracing for rejection. "Hi," he said softly. "Hello," I replied, brushing soil off my knees. "Alara's inside." He nodded. "I know." He stepped closer, but not too close. "I came to check on you." My heart paused, traitorously hopeful. "That wasn't necessary," I whispered. "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." There it was, the quiet truth hanging between us. He glanced at the roses, their delicate petals trembling in the breeze. "I've been thinking about what happened in the garage." I held my breath. And I don't want things to feel strange between us," he said. "I don't want you to think I crossed a line." "You didn't," I assured him. "We shared a moment, a human one." Relief softened his features, but something else flickered behind his eyes, something he was fighting within himself. He exhaled slowly. "Talking to you that day, it was the first time in months I felt actually heard. You didn't judge me. You didn't avoid the truth. You just listened." His honesty landed too deeply. I felt it in my chest. "I understand more than you think," I said softly. "Loneliness isn't always about being alone. Sometimes it's about feeling unseen." He stepped closer, the sunlight catching the faint gray strands at his temples. "Larissa, when you held my hand." I closed my eyes. "Gabrielle." "No," he said gently. "Just let me ask you this." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "When you held my hand, did it feel wrong to you?" The world seemed to pause. A bird fluttered past, the roses swayed, the breeze brushed my cheek. But everything narrowed to his question. "It didn't feel wrong," I whispered. "It felt meaningful, and that's what makes it dangerous." He laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "I guess meaningful things usually are." We stood there in the warmth of the afternoon, two people tethered to very different ages, very different lives, yet somehow standing on the same emotional threshold. Then he said something I will never forget. "Larissa, I hope someday someone sees you the way I did that day. Someone without complications. Someone who's allowed to." The words struck deep. Not romantic, not scandalous, just honest in a way that felt almost too tender to hold. "I don't need someone," I whispered. "I know," he replied, "but you deserve someone." I swallowed hard, the truth of it almost painful. Through the open kitchen window, Alara's voice drifted faintly. My name carried like a warning. Gabriel stepped back immediately, straightening his shirt. "You should go inside," he murmured, "and you should go before she sees you here." He nodded but didn't move right away. His eyes stayed fixed on mine, filled with something that looked like gratitude and regret woven together. "Thank you," he said softly, "for seeing me." "And thank you," I whispered, for reminding me I still exist. A sad smile touched his lips. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading down the garden path. I watched him disappear around the corner, the sunlight catching the back of his hair. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't moved, but because the moment didn't feel tragic. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like something inside me had been gently stitched back together. When I stepped into the kitchen, Alara looked up from her phone and smiled, unaware of the emotional earthquake that had just rippled through her backyard. "Dinner soon?" she asked. "Soon," I answered. But as I moved around the kitchen, a quiet truth settled in my chest. Not every powerful experience demands a future. Some exist only to remind us we're still capable of feeling deeply. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that within a week, something would happen that would force all three of us to face truths we'd been avoiding. Truths that would test us in ways I had never imagined. And when that moment arrived, the quiet tenderness in the garden would suddenly feel like the calm before a storm. A week passed, quiet on the surface, but heavy underneath. Life continued in its familiar rhythm. The house breathed in its usual way, the garden stretched toward the sun, and Alara rushed from her scrubs to her slippers with the same exhaustion she always carried. Nothing looked different, but inside me something had shifted so deeply that even simple routines felt new, fragile, alive. In those days, Gabriel kept his distance. I felt it in every silence. He didn't stop by. He didn't offer to fix a loose hinge or drop off groceries or check on my back. And I knew why. He was giving me space, giving himself space, untangling the thread between us before it knotted into something neither of us could explain. But distance does not erase a moment. It only echoes it. On the 7th evening, just as the sky softened from pale orange into the deep blue of early night, Alara came into the living room and sat beside me. Not rushed, not distracted. She sat like she had something she had practiced saying all day. "Mom," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Her tone made something inside me tighten. "Of course," I replied. She twisted her hands in her lap. "It's about Gabriel." My breath halted, but I kept my expression calm. "What about him?" She hesitated. "He's been distant, with me, with everything. I don't know what's going on." I swallowed, choosing my next breath carefully. "Relationships go through phases," I offered gently. "I know that," she said, shaking her head. "But this feels different. When he talks, he sounds far away. Like he's thinking about something he won't tell me." My heart pressed painfully against my ribs. I kept my voice steady. "Did you ask him?" "I tried," she sighed. "But he just said he's stressed, and the way he looks at me sometimes." She paused, then said something that nearly stopped my heartbeat altogether. "Mom, I think he's hiding something." The words slid through me like cold water. I reached out slowly and touched her hand. "Alara, what exactly are you afraid of?" She lifted her gaze. Her eyes were watery, confused. "I don't know," she whispered. "But last night, I asked him if he still wanted a future with me, and he didn't answer right away. He froze, Mom." A sharp ache tightened in my chest. Not jealousy, not longing, just a terrible understanding of the weight all three of us were now carrying. "And then," she continued, "he asked me something strange. He asked how you were doing." My fingers stilled. "He asked about me?" "Yes," she whispered. "And the way he said it, I don't know, Mom. There was something in his voice, like he was worried, or guilty, or both. Her eyes searched my face. Did something happen between you two? Time stopped. The room felt too small, too quiet, too fragile. I could have lied. A small lie, a harmless one, a protective one. But lies at my age feel heavier than truth. I inhaled slowly. Nothing happened that disrespected you, Alara. She nodded, but her expression sharpened, sensing the spaces between my words. She opened her mouth to ask more when a knock sounded at the front door, soft, hesitant, almost trembling. The kind of knock someone gives when they're unsure if they should be there. I froze. Alara froze. We both turned toward the hallway. "Are you expecting someone?" she whispered. "No," I said, my pulse quickening. She stood, frowning, and walked toward the door. I remained seated, unable to move, feeling each heartbeat echo in my throat. When she opened the door, the night air drifted in, and behind it, a familiar voice. "Hi," Gabrielle said softly. I closed my eyes. The storm had arrived. Alara stepped aside slowly. "Gav, what are you doing here?" "I needed to talk," he said, his tone gentle but strained. "To both of you." My breath caught. Both of us. He walked in, his eyes flickering toward me, just for a second. But in that second, I saw everything. Confusion, guilt, longing, fear, and a truth he could no longer hold. Alone. Alara's voice cracked through the silence. "Gav, what's going on with you?" He swallowed hard, his gaze shifting between us, like a man standing on a breaking bridge. "I didn't plan this," he said softly. "But what happened in the past week? I can't keep pretending nothing changed." I felt the room spinning. "Gabrielle," I whispered, "please." But he shook his head, stepping forward. "No more silence," he said. "Not tonight." Alara's voice trembled. "Are you leaving me?" His face crumpled. "No, that's not what this is." Alara took a shaky breath. "Then what is this?" Gabrielle looked at me, then back at her, and I felt the entire world tilt. "This is me," he said, voice breaking. "Trying to tell the truth before the truth breaks us." The room went silent, utterly silent. And that was the moment, right there in the stillness of my living room, that I understood. The emotional storm we had all been avoiding had finally reached our doorstep. And none of us would walk out of that night unchanged. If this story touched you or made you feel something you didn't expect, thank you for listening, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more real stories to life.